a Netflix original film.
The Wi-Fi isn't working.
In the event of a global communications breakdown, do the following. Stay inside.
What just happened here is happening everywhere.
Avoid strangers.
We've all been deserted.
I don't trust them.
And most importantly, do not panic. Julia Roberts.
What happens next?
Mahershala Ali.
I knew something was coming.
Leave the World Behind. Rated R. In select theaters now and on Netflix December 8th.
Today on CityCast Chicago, we all know how beautiful the city is, but TV host Geoffrey Baer has made a career out of sharing Chicago's beauty with the rest of the world. Whether it's our fly skyscrapers, our dope parks, or even our hidden mermaid. Part 2 of the most beautiful places in Chicago debuts on Monday on WTTW, so we're revisiting our conversation with Baer from earlier this spring. It's Thursday, November 30th. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago's talking about. The most beautiful places in Chicago. I want to give you a little jingle for that, right? The most beautiful places in Chicago.
Oh, man. Why didn't we hire you? We should have had you, man.
Nah, I got to work on it. I wasn't feeling it. What makes a place beautiful to you?
I think I was surprised because I was imagining that we would be going after visual beauty. It turned out we interviewed all these people and they had so much heart. And it really broadened out the definition to more like what makes something beautiful, what the meaning of something, like what it means to these people that's so beautiful. I've been a tour guide for the Chicago Architecture Foundation longer than I've been at WTTW, class of 87. And, sometimes I'm walking people around the city and we'll walk into, for example, something like the Tiffany Dome in the Cultural Center. And people will their jaws drop. They just can't, they're like, wait, what? This is here? And so that's kind of where I started with the show. Like just finding places around Chicago that maybe you've heard of, maybe you haven't. In a lot of cases, I haven't, which is great. I learned some things that you just can't believe your eyes when you go inside. There's the sort of epic scale beauty, like something like the Elks Memorial, which is in the show up in Lincoln Park, that just looks like the Pantheon from Rome. But then there's really kind of more modest or small scale beauty. That's sort of equally beautiful. We go down to this abandoned, this big swath of vacant land along the South Lakefront that used to be a steel mill. And we meet this wonderful guerrilla artist, Roman Villarreal, who made this, I would say rather modest scale sculpture, as a kind of tribute to all the people who worked in the mill. He worked in the mill when he was a teenager.
Yeah, we've gotten to hang out with Roman in front of a few of his works. Beautiful story.
Did you?
Yeah, we went down to the Secret Mermaid.
We've got that as an extra web feature.
A little bonus content for him. Geoffrey, how did you determine these 20 or so places?
I knew I was asking for trouble when I called the show the most beautiful places in Chicago. It's intentionally provocative, right? I think we should get into a discussion about, did I find the most beautiful places? Are these really the most beautiful places? What does that even mean that a place is beautiful? So I've been doing this TV work for WTTW for, 25 years. And I've been a docent since 1987 for the Architecture Foundation, Chicago Architecture Center. So I knew about a lot of beautiful places. And that's kind of where I started. I just kind of did a brain dump, on paper with our producer, Bridget Sarno. We called it a brain dump. And we just everything we could think of. Because I was really hoping to find places I'd never heard of. We're representing a wide swath of Chicago. We don't want it to just be downtown. We want it to be the neighborhoods, suburbs.
This piece starts off with one of our newest, most beautiful marvels from the architect Jeannie Gang, and it's the St. Regis Tower downtown. Can you tell us about the unique characteristics of this building?
Yeah, well, it's you can't miss it. It's the third tallest building in Chicago. So this is kind of not far from the lakefront. It's east of Michigan Avenue on the south side of the river. And it's that tall, shimmering glass building that kind of angles in, angles out, angles in, angles out. And it's sort of 3 towers, and then it breaks down into 2, and then it breaks down into 1. So it's this very slender, tall building. And one of the things I say in the show is, boy, it better be beautiful because you can see it from everywhere.
Yes. I think it's my favorite addition to the skyline. Just the way the buildings curve, sort of the 3 main parts of it that you can kind of see from, my south side angle look like these really cool steps of the gods. It complements the river.
Yes.
Like if you're on the river tour, the way they'll talk about the how the color and the river is supposed to, like, it flows together.
A lot of this is we want people to see beautiful things that they can go and experience. We want people to get out there. But I also like to take people places you're not allowed to go. Like I'm allowed to go there with my camera, but you're not allowed to. So we got into the penthouse unit in this building, which is the highest residential unit in Chicago. It's like you live on the sky deck of Sears Tower, basically. There's a missing 2 floors in the building where they took the windows out and the floors are empty. And this is called a blow-through floor because the research showed the building would sway a lot in the wind. So they took 2 floors out and let the wind kind of blow through the building. Well, you're not allowed to go on the blow-through floor, but they let me out there with my cameras.
How did it feel to have the wind blow through your eyebrows?
It was something, I was going to say, I wish I had hair. I'm bald, because then you would have seen the wind blowing through my hair. But unfortunately, I just had to tell you about it and you had to hear the wind.
You go up to this penthouse that has a bathroom tub that sees out onto Grant Park,
Yeah.
and the cost is $19 million. How does it feel to learn that, some of the most beautiful views of Chicago, they can only be experienced by a very select few?
Oh, that's a really important question, right? I mean, that gets into equity and, partly I'm taking you up there because, hey, I can't afford a $19 million apartment either. So, and it's not the 1%, it's the, 1/100th of 1%, that could afford a place like that. But I hope what we discover in the show is that there's so many beautiful places that are totally accessible, that anybody can go and see. And again, that's another reason why I think it's really important to get out into all the neighborhoods and out into some suburbs. Another building that's in the show, I've passed it 1,000,000 times on the Kennedy Expressway. It's this blue glass building with like yellow fins that kind of curves I say in the show, this causes distracted driving on the Kennedy Expressway. It's called El Centro, and it's a place where that serves immigrant populations, giving them college education through Northeastern Illinois University. And the architect
Up in Avondale.
In Avondale, right. And the so sort of far north side. And the architect of that, Juan Gabriel Moreno, says,
all of our communities deserve uplifting architecture, not just, a downtown or a central business district that you can create such incredible impact. Those communities have been forgotten for so long.
He says, I love architecture that jolts you and that it feels like the neighborhood's been gifted something. And I really wanted to include that in the show, to really show that there's beauty out there everywhere.
You also don't focus just on buildings, but also the natural environment. What's the story of Palmisano Park?
I love Palmisano Park. So this is in Bridgeport, and if you go there, you leave the sort of dense, crowded streets of Bridgeport, and I-55 is roaring right by there. You leave the streets, and all of a sudden you feel like you're like along the limestone bluffs of the Mississippi River. Like you're just in this quiet, strange, wilderness. And it turns out this was a limestone quarry from like the early 1800s. It's 300 feet straight down. And then after it was done being quarried, the city used it for construction debris. And then they turned it over to the Chicago Park District. And Ernie Wong, this wonderful landscape architect who took me there, and he's such a warm, wonderful guy, talked about how they shoveled out a lot of this debris and they build like a mound on one side that's prairie. And then neighbors called it Mount Bridgeport. The old quarry, they dug down and made it into a lake at the bottom under these limestone walls. There's a wetland that descends down into it he designed all of this, that looks natural, but it's all designed.
You also made it out to the suburbs in this special. Where did you go to in Bartlett?
That place is totally amazing. It's called the BAPS. I can't even begin to say all of the words because it's Hindu. It's a Hindu temple. It's called a mandir, BAPS Hindu mandir in Bartlett. So imagine like a little marble sculpture that you could hold in your hand. And then imagine an entire building made of these like Legos, made of these like thousands and thousands and thousands of these little marble sculptures. And then you look up at the ceiling, and the whole ceiling is marble. This whole mandir, this whole Hindu temple, was carved by hand in India by thousands of artisans and shipped in pieces to Bartlett, Illinois, and reassembled like a jigsaw puzzle. And the woman who tours me around there, Payal Shah, so many of these interviews in the show were so wonderful. She's kind of got this giddy, almost kind of joy of telling me not only about the architecture, but about the meaning of the place.
We believe that God manifests through these images. They're not just, pictures. They're not just images of stone. And we really believe that God is live and here amongst us.
And so you're sort of surrounded by holiness?
We are. We try to see God in each other too, right? We see the light in each other.
When you moved through this list, did you come out on the other side with a new favorite?
That's a good question. I don't play favorites. It's like, how can you decide which one of your children is your favorite? I have to say, now this is a thing that isn't actually a place, but I'm an aviation geek.
I knew you were going to go there. I had a feel that's where it was going.
I mean, I'm one of those nerds that like listens to air traffic control because I think it's cool. So at the beginning of the show, I get in a little Cessna 182, 4 passengers, and this pilot wanted to show me what he thinks. Again, this is privileged. This is something not everybody in the world can get to do, of course. But he thinks there's nothing that beats flying out over the lake at sunset and seeing our beautiful skyline in the sunset or at sunrise, and so I get to go up in this plane with him. That to me was like the thrill of a lifetime. And it was really cool because our cameraman, director of photography, Oral User, who's brilliant, and that's part of the reason this show is so beautiful, he was in another plane.
I was going to ask, how did you get the shot? I was wondering if somebody was in the other plane.
Yeah, and it was amazing plus we stuck GoPro cameras all over our plane, so we had different angles that we could use.
You could have just did 30 minutes of that and I'd have been good to go.
Oh, a fellow airplane geek. I love it.
Pound for pound, whether it's because of its green spaces, the birthplace of the skyscraper, and all the different neighborhood wonders that we have, would you argue that Chicago punches up against any other city in terms of the beauty of our buildings and the beauty of our stories?
That is such a Chicago question. Mm-hmm. I think I kind of made my career out of the fact that people in Chicago just love Chicago, right? I mean, we just think it's the best city in the world. I think more and more Chicagoans know about the river, which used to be just totally forgotten, like nobody thought about the river, and just all of the beauty, not just on the downtown stretches of the river, but the natural areas to the north and the industrial areas to the south, which have their own kind of beauty. People come to Chicago, it's a city on a lake, and then they look out at the lake and they're like, wait, that's a lake? That looks like an ocean, and it's kind of astonishing. And we're, I believe, one of the only cities anywhere in the world, where our waterfront is for all the people. You know, it's in most cities, it's given over either to the wealthy for housing or to industry, and you can't get anywhere near it. But you know, we have reserved our lakefront for the public, and even along the south side where it had been cut off by the Illinois Central tracks. You know, all these new pedestrian bridges are being added to the lakefront, and that whole south side lakefront has been amazingly restored. Huge parks by the greatest landscape architect of the 19th century, Frederick Law Olmsted, and then all the neighborhood parks around Chicago, which is an innovation that we created in Chicago, the idea of neighborhood parks.
The Burnhams and the Jensens.
I think we definitely are right up there with any place in the world.
Geoffrey Baer hosts the most beautiful places in Chicago on WTTW Channel 11. Part 2 of the series comes out Monday. I also want to know what you think of the most beautiful places in the shot. Let me know at 773-780-0246. Leave your name, your neighborhood, and your most beautiful place in the land. Before I let you go, some good news. This Saturday, the 3rd annual music festival and youth pitch competition is at the Kieran Center for the Arts in Austin. They're going to have food, youth panels, and workshops. You can check out their full lineup in the show notes. Make sure you come back here same time tomorrow when we're breaking down the biggest stories of the week, including what's going on with the temporary migrant shelter in Brighton Park. Is construction starting? Is it not starting? We're going to talk to you then. Peace.
You'll have to edit.
Oh, stop. No, that was amazing.
Where did he go there? Down a total rabbit hole.